Do you ever wonder about those little towns you drive through that are just a dot on the map? Places that not many know much about? What made them? What broke them? What could still haunt them? Well, we're going to dive a little deeper into that. I'm your host, Doc Steph, and welcome to Rural Doc Hop. We're going to do this next episode a little differently, as there's so much history for this area that it would be a bit too long. So welcome to episode 4A. You will have to wait in suspense for episode 4B, which will be the hauntings and lore for this episode. Our next stop on this journey are two small towns, Dresden and Trinway, Ohio. Dresden has a population of approximately 1,650 today, and Trinway has a population of 300. Both are located in Muskingum County and situated between Ohio State Route 60, 666, and 208, just south of Ohio State Route 16. If you came to the area of Ohio in the early 1700s, you would not have recognized this area, and may not have even been able to walk the current state route's path. The area was heavily wooded, with thick brush surrounding rivers and creeks. This area is the site of multiple Native American towns, but the most notable of which was Wakatomica, located along the Muskingum River, where the Wakatomica Creek empties into it. The village was established in 1756 by Shawnee tribes that were trying to distance themselves from raids by the colony of Virginia. This was a long haul for them, first moving from land found within the Virginia colony to Shawneetown on the Ohio River, and then north to Pickaway Plains near current Circleville. From there, they moved north to Wakatomica. In 1774, during Dunmore's War, Wakatomica and 4 other Shawnee villages along the Muskingum River were destroyed by the Virginia colonial militia. Later settlers who came to this area had long and slow travels over hills, marshes, and minimal roads. Many would use local waterways to get as close to their destinations as possible. Major Jonathan Cass served in the Revolutionary War and saw battles in the Battle of Bunker Hill and the sieges of Boston, Saratoga, and Valley Forge. This earned him warrants for land in the Northwest Territory, part of which would later become Ohio. He purchased further warrants and came to the area with 40 of them, each good for 100 acres, and claimed 4,000 acres of fertile bottom ground just north of Dresden and was later joined by his family. He was noted to have introduced the first merino sheep to the area from Scotland, and many believe he was the first to plant tomato seeds in the area. In 1803, commissioners sanctioned a road from Zanesville to the Dresden area and further on to Coshocton along the western edge of the Muskingum River. As the area of Dresden grew, more trades came to the area, including milling of lumber and grain. In 1805, a dam was erected on Wakatomica Creek to supply Stillman grist mill and sawmill. Many other mills followed, including Seth Adams erecting a cracker mill, which coarsely ground corn for animal feed. Grist and flour mills were later opened. In 1815, James Murno opened the first distillery, and later in 1816, homes were built by Seth Adams and Laban Lammert in what would become Dresden. Dresden was platted in 1819 and was not incorporated until 1825. In 1828, Dr. Brown started seeing patients in the area. During that time, it would have been not common. It would not have been uncommon to be afflicted with malaria from the marshy and swampy ground. Swarms of mosquitoes carried disease. Malaria caused recurring chills and high fevers. The chills would cause such shaking that they would rattle the beds of those who were sick. Milk sickness could occur in Ohio from settlers consuming milk or meat from cows that had grazed on the poisonous white snakeroot plant. This would cause muzzle weakness, vomiting, and oftentimes death within days. Dysentery was also not uncommon, which would spread through contaminated water supplies or livestock runoff. This would cause diarrhea, cramping, and fever, with dehydration as the main cause of death from it. Typhoid would have been a frequently fought infection, which was spread through contaminated food and water, causing high fevers and weakness. Tuberculosis was also widespread at the time and could severely impact rural populations, especially during harsh winters when families would move indoors. Much of medicine at the time was to help with symptoms, but very few ailments had treatments at that time. The Ohio and Erie Canal crossed just north of Dresden, and area residents petitioned for the legislature to have the town connected to the system. A branch line was dug to the Muskingum River at Dresden. At the time, the canal was connected to 30 homes. The Ohio and Erie Canal crossed just north of Dresden, and area residents petitioned for the legislature to have the town connected to the system. A branch line was dug to the Muskingum River at Dresden. At the time the canal was connected, 30 homes stood in Dresden, but they would later see a boom from the canal. At first, freight was transported from the canal to steamships on the Muskingum River, and later to barges pushed by steam-powered tugboats and onto the Ohio River. Local farmers produced large amounts of corn, wheat, flax, and animal products, including wool, cattle, hogs, and timber. Salt was produced by local brine wells. Clay was rich in the area and used for pottery and bricks. Oily coal was found in the area, which was called cannel coal. This was ground into a powder, put in large steam vats, and oil was distilled from it. It was clear and thin and could be used as a low-cost alternative to the whale oil used in lamps. Let's take a step back to introduce a family that had a huge impact on Dresden and later Trinway, the Adams family. No, not the Adams family. This was a different Adams family. George Adams, son of George Beale Adams, inherited a plantation in Virginia with slaves after his father's death. He was staunchly against owning another human and felt all men were created equal. He had served in the Revolutionary War and fought for freedom. He did not feel owning the plantation and its slaves was the right thing to do, to the point he felt owning a slave was a sin against God. He decided to sell the plantation, and he freed all the slaves that had been in servitude there and moved north. Many Revolutionary War soldiers had been gifted lands in the Northwest Territory, but many did not want to make the trip west and sold their warrants to holdings companies, who could then sell the tracts of land to other settlers. Adams did just that and chose Ohio to become his family's home due to its constitution, which guaranteed Ohio would stay free of slavery and involuntary servitude. He purchased wagons and supplies for the trip west and left for Ohio on the National Road, far from the Route 40 we know today. He left in the summer of 1807. It was a long haul back then, through dark woods, muddy trails, and evidently a whole winter, which would have been full of snow and ice storms, as the family did not arrive to the area until spring of 1808. He chose an area just east of the Muskingum River to make his home on 150 acres of land. His 150 acres would become his son George W. and Edward Adams upon his and his wife's passing in 1826. This is where the family starts getting tied to the local area more. His sons saw an opportunity in the new canal system that went just north of Dresden, as farmers around the area had to take grain to Coshocton or Zanesville to have it ground into flour and sold. They decided to build a mill in now what is Adams Mills, Ohio, found along Route 16 on the Ohio and Erie Canal, which helped power the water wheel needed for this mill to function. Once the side-cut canal was finished to Dresden and the Muskingum River, the flour they milled could be sent on to the south as far as New Orleans by way of the Muskingum River to the Ohio River and the mighty Mississippi River. The brothers made quite a bit of money with their ventures and each built a home for $40,000 for their families. One can still be seen in Adams Mills today, which was Edward's home. George's was just north of current Trinway, but has since been demolished. George married and had 5 children and became a member of the Ohio General Assembly. He also formed a stock company in order to build a suspension bridge in Dresden, which was greatly needed, as the ferry could not cross the Muskingum River at high water times, and a steep hill had to be negotiated to where the ferry docked on the east side. In 1850, cable suspension bridges were possible, and an engineer, George Roebling, built his first suspension bridge over the Ohio River at Wheeling. George Adams' nephew became the construction engineer of the project. Cables of the bridge were woven on site, supported by 2 high stone piers on each side of the river, supporting the span of nearly 1,000 feet. Truss work under the roadway was formed by wooden braces in an X formation, and a toll house was made on the Dresden side. Roebling's design came to life in 1853 when the bridge was opened to traffic at a cost of $26,000, approximately $1.1 million today. The bridge would sway when crossing it, and limits to loads had to be put in place. No more than 20 head of livestock could cross at one time at a slow walk. It stood for 60 years before being washed out by the historic floods of 1913. Back to George Adams. In 1853, his wife passed away around 1 year after losing an infant son, and only a few short weeks later, he lost another son. He mourned for several years before meeting Mary Jane Robinson. She was quite a bit younger than him, with a 20-year age gap, but he fell in love nonetheless. Originally, after the couple was married, they lived in the large farmhouse he and his late wife, Clarissa, lived in, and raised their family. But slowly those memories made him rethink living there. He decided to build Mary her own fairy tale castle. He wanted out of the old farmhouse so badly that he quickly had a small 2-story frame house built near the Adams Brothers warehouse in Dresden, in which they lived until the completion of Prospect Place, named due to the prospect of a brighter future. A 3-story brick home was constructed with a cupola at its center and 4 large chimneys to help heat the home. To the east, a second wing was added that was 2 stories tall for the servants. A copper roof was placed, and the gingerbread porticos were painted bright colors. The night before the family was to move into the house, it caught fire and burned to the ground. The heat of the fire was so bad that the bucket brigade that came to try to save some of it could not get close enough to douse the flames. There were rumors of who burned down the home, one of which was said to be an old Shawnee woman known only as Satan in the area, whose motive was said to be the home stood on Shawnee burial ground. The more likely culprit was a well-known bricklayer who also had a storied past and later was said to have boasted about setting the fire in order to make more money rebuilding the home. The second version of Prospect Place was built on the old foundation and was identical to the first, and the family moved in the year following the original fire. Mary had 2 children with George, John J. and Sophia. George continued his father's abolitionist work, and Prospect Place became a stop on the Underground Railroad, and George himself a conductor. He would initially go himself, and then later send men to retrieve refugee slaves from the South and bring them north. Originally, the mill in Adams Mills was the stop, but as civil war seemed more likely, he moved it to his new home, saving his business should the secret get out to the wrong people. Abolitionists' meetings likely took place in the Gentleman's Parlor at Prospect Place in the 1850s and 1860s. Nelson Grant was a freed slave, formerly of Virginia, who had come to the area to live as well. He made a name for himself in coal mining and an orchard and became a millionaire. He used his fortune to also become a well-known local conductor for the Underground Railroad, and many such meetings were likely with him. Lore from family and locals has it that Abraham Lincoln even visited the house, although we haven't been able to truly tell if this happened. When Lincoln became president in 1860, and the South shortly after seceded from the Union, George continued his abolitionist work. He gave quite a bit of money to the government at the time and opened his home to any Union officer or man in transit in this part of the country. There may have been plans to make Prospect Place the headquarters of the Union Army in the event of the Confederate invasion of Ohio. When the Civil War ended, Adams and the area celebrated. He helped fund celebration that lasted for nearly 2 weeks. Following the war, the family had years of growth and fortune. His eldest daughter, Anna, married William Cox Jr., whose family had bought the Riverdale estate from Jonathan Cass. George became involved in the railroad, and in later years, he was the director of the Steubenville, Indiana Railroad, and was the owner and director of the Cincinnati and Muskingum Valley Railroad until his death in 1879. The area near Prospect Place would become Dresden Junction, where these two lines crossed. Dresden Junction was the first place where people from Dresden could catch a train, either heading west towards Columbus, east towards Pittsburgh, or south to Cincinnati. Later, the town's name would be changed to Trinway. In 1896, a new family came to town, the Lonneberger family, which would later shape the town of Dresden and its surroundings further. As Dresden became a rural transportation and industrial hub with a hotel on Main Street, 3 railroad stations, and multiple mills, including a floating lumber mill, many businesses thrived, including Dresden Basket Factory. J.W. Lonneberger took a job in 1919 with the factory and became a full-time apprentice and became a master of tight weaving that would later become his trademark. He met Bonnie Gist from Trinway and married her in 1927. The basket factory closed during the Great Depression, and he found work at a local paper mill, but continued making baskets on weekends. In 1936, he and his wife bought the old basket factory and named it the Ohio Ware Basket Company. They had a total of 6 boys and 6 girls, one of which, Dave, would become the founder of Lonneberger Basket Company. Prior to his large success, Dave Lonneberger served in the U.S. Army from 1961 to 1962. He bought the local dairy and then the local grocery store. He saw an opportunity as baskets became more popular again in the 1970s and had his father make a dozen to take to a nearby store, which immediately bought them. He opened J.W.'s Handwoven Baskets in 1976 in Dresden and later expanded into the old woolen mill where his mother had worked. He found that selling these handcrafted baskets was better done at home shows where the history and craftsmanship could be explained. This grew into a huge business, and factories and a homestead were built in nearby Frazeysburg. Huge basket gatherings were held in Columbus for those that sold the baskets to gather. Headliners were brought in to perform. During the peak of his company in the 1990s and early 2000s, the company had over $1 billion in sales. Dresden was hoping that this would continue and had stores selling baskets, liners, and other accessories. A large basket-shaped building, 7 stories tall, housing offices, was erected outside of Newark, Ohio, which can still be seen when driving down State Route 16. And my kiddos can't help but yell, "Big basket!" excitedly every time we drive past it. Dave was also known to be a philanthropist in the area, focusing on historic buildings in the area. He helped with many, including the Captain's House, the Dresden Iron Mill, the Dresden Woolen Mill, Prospect Place, Dresden Hotel, the Cox House in Trinway, and the Dresden Railroad Station. Unfortunately, this would come to an end as the next generation took his place after his death. It was said that he went from a healthy 61-year-old man to the stage 4 cancer patient almost overnight. He passed after 18 months of grueling chemotherapy, surgeries, and experimental treatments. There was no course set for the company, no succession plan, or a transition phase, as they thought they would have years to decades left with the founder. But his daughters had been working with him through much of the business boom. One thing that made the loyal customers upset is the business had gotten into pottery as well, and instead of making it in the U.S., they decided to have it made in China. The economy also had a hand in its downturn, and the company quickly tried to diversify to everything needed for a household. The company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2014, and then converted this to a Chapter 7 and liquidated the company's assets. The homestead still stands with some empty buildings and others rented to fanatics and shipping companies. Dresden's once booming businesses on Main Street have decreased and now have a few small stores. A day trip to Dresden and Trinway can have a nice, calm weekend or weekday adventure. From March through November, there are free tours of Prospect Place from 12 to 4 on Saturdays and Sundays. You can tour the grounds and house at your own pace, and a staff member will be available for questions. They also have a small gift shop with books, artwork, and merchandise related to Prospect Place. The original mill from Adams Mills was deconstructed and moved via canal boat to Dresden. The suspension bridge that replaced the original suspension bridge after the washout can be seen crossing the river at Dresden next to the newer bridge, which allows for car traffic to cross the river. Each year, Dresden hosts a basket festival. This celebrates the rich basket-making heritage, and local vendors, live entertainment, and multiple food vendors are the stars. There are also hands-on experiences that help to bring basket making to life. There will be a build-a-basket activity led by professional basket weavers who will guide new weavers through the entire process, creating a unique festival basket. This does have a fee, but many have enjoyed doing these things through the years. There's also a basket painting experience as well. This year there's a special treat where you can register for a picnic lunch in a basket with a tote and a picnic lunch to enjoy throughout the Dresden area and the festival. Picnic blankets will be set up near the big basket for everyone to enjoy as well. Visit Zanesville also has a stop in Dresden at the Cafe and Sweet Shop on Main Street. This is part of their annual ice cream trail with multiple stops on the surrounding area. Maybe you would want to take your ice cream treat with to see the world's largest basket, which is in the corner of 5th and Main Streets in Dresden. It was constructed from 10 hardwood maple trees and required 2,000 employees' hours of work to complete. It is listed in the Guinness Book of World Records. You can also walk Main Street, where small shops and stores have anything from Christmas decor to gifts and more. And somehow I have become a poet and didn't know it. This episode is getting a bit long. I will end up leaving you in suspense for the large lore and hauntings the area has to offer until episode 4B. I can tell you it would be well worth listening since you now know some of the history that surrounds this area, especially as Prospect Place has been said to be one of the most haunted locations in Ohio. So what do you think? Would you visit and learn more about a small dot on the map? Would you look into more history of an unknown small town, the era it was founded in and thrived, and what caused it to decay over time? Or would you even dare to hunt for the ghosts that haunt the area? Stay tuned to Rural Doc Hop for more small town history and lore. Thank you for lending your ear. I'm Doc Steph, signing off for now.